I want Hilary Swank in the next Terminator movie so bad.
There is nothing in this world that you give me to do to hug a robot.
It's because it's so incredible and intricate that it's impossible not to notice.
Music's the core of this movie.
I was born again to watch this movie.
You'll find redeeming things and you'll be thinking about it for a long time afterwards.
There was no bone saw.
Just John hamming it up over here.
2.5 out of 3 of us recommend it.
Everybody loves talking about movies. Let's talk about movies.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Pause Rewind Play podcast. This is your host, Casey. Here with me tonight, we have...
Josh, what's up, guys?
We have...
Michael, hey.
And we have a special guest who is a friend of mine named...
Justin.
Justin, how's it going tonight?
So good.
So I reached out on Facebook and I posted, like, does anyone want to come talk John Wick? And you posted, like, the 3 emojis with the guy, like, with the hand up, right?
Yeah, 3 hands up.
3 hands up.
Yeah.
That would be like you and me walking into a building, like high-fiving people. No, so it was exciting. I was like, I haven't talked to this guy in forever, and so let's bring him onto the podcast. And then we were messaging back and forth. He's like, well, I suppose I could because I'll be talking John Wick at work, and stuff like that. So
It's going to come up no matter what.
I think John Wick is a good one to do. But yeah, we're excited. We're going to talk John Wick. This is a movie that came out in 2014. So obviously there will be some spoilers ahead. We'll give the official full spoiler warning. But first, let's kind of take a look into what the week has been like in the movie watching world. Tonight we're going to pick on Michael. Michael, what did you watch this week?
I watched The Dark Crystal. I finally did it, Vince.
Wait, did you watch the movie
The
did you watch...
the 1982 movie.
Oh.
I loved it. It was so good. It was like watching Legend of Zelda. And the world they built, I don't know, it's so good. There's a lot of spoilers. I just enjoyed it. I can't wait to get into the series. I really want to read the books now. Apparently there's books. I don't know. Vince got me on it.
Wow.
Damn.
Vince, you got someone hooked. Nice. I started watching the first episode of the series, and I was pretty stoked on it, so I just have to finish getting into the rest.
Yeah.
But I've told Vince we will do an actual episode on the Dark Crystal.
I'm in.
So he's pretty excited for when he comes back. Oh yeah, by the way, Vince is not here because he is in Puerto Rico tonight. Actually, technically he's getting on the airplane right now to fly away. So safe travels, Vince, and hopefully you enjoy listening to this as you roll around the island of Puerto Rico. Josh, what did you watch this week?
Absolutely nothing. Just football. Sorry, guys. This was a non-movie week besides John Wick.
Shouldn't have to apologize for football.
So yeah, it was a lot of work and school because I put off all of my homework assignments until the very last minute, and I did those on Saturday.
It's American football over homework.
Yep. Well, that's the only reason I was motivated to do my homework on Saturday was because if I left it to Sunday, I wouldn't do it because I'd be watching football. So
there you go. That's a system.
That was it. And then I watched John Wick today, as I was coming home on the train and at my house. So
what a Monday.
I finished John Wick 20 minutes ago, guys. So I'm ready for this.
He's pumped. He's sweating, actually.
It's pretty roasty in here, but.
Yeah, sorry. I had to turn down the fan. I could hear it in the thing a little too much, and I know it's going to transfer over to recording. So sweat with me a little bit in the sweat lodge of my house.
We're just sweating because we're really excited about it. It's not because we're actually hot.
Oh, well.
Yes.
That makes 3 of you then. But, Justin, I know this is putting you a little bit on the spot. Did you watch anything good this week?
I'm actually pumped to be able to answer this. I just went to Iceland, and so for having something to watch on the plane, I downloaded something onto my iPad, rolled the dice, didn't even know what it was, but it's I think it's an Amazon original series called Sneaky Pete.
Sneaky Pete.
Yeah, and it's about a guy who he's in jail, and his cellmate is going to be in there a lot longer than him, and he has this old these family members who haven't seen him for 20 years, and this other guy gets out of jail and. He doesn't have anywhere to go, so he goes to the family and convinces them that he's Pete, their grandchild. And anyways, it's incredible. It's really good. I binge watched probably the whole first season just on the plane rides. Like I said, it was a roll of the dice. I didn't know what I was getting into, but I won on that one. So
Sneaky Pete.
Sneaky Pete, yeah,
All
it's
right.
good.
We'll add that to the watch list. I always want to get a new weird thing. I always, like rolling the dice when you're saying this. I always gamble. So there's a show on Netflix right now called The Romanovs. It's about the last czar of Russia before the revolution. And I was pretty pumped on it because it has some like played out drama and has some historical, readings going along with it where there's just people talking in the background of all this. But I wasn't expecting some things that happened in it, so I had to turn it off because I was like, ooh, this is not up my alley after all. But it was cool at first. So if you're interested in the Russian Revolution and the time period before that, check out The Last of the Tsars on Netflix.
I'm interested in what you weren't ready for. I mean, don't tell me now, but I'm pumped for after this show to hear what that was.
It was really good. I just was very I wasn't expecting what I saw.
All right.
But no, I'm just kidding.
Like it got a little Game of Thronesy.
Yeah, that was it. And I loved Game of Thrones, but I wasn't as connected to these characters because they were portraying real characters, right? So if it's a fantasy world, I'm okay with anything. But I'm like, did they really just put this in here to boost the ratings, or did they is there a diary somewhere it's showed off my wife's butt to a camera today or something? I don't know, but there's some more to it. But yeah, that I don't even remember what I watched this week and how I got on the subject. But yeah, Sneaky Pete on Amazon, football, and The Dark Crystal for the week.
Yeah.
I watched a lot of YouTube this week actually. I looked into a number of ways to make the perfect soup dumpling.
Oh, that's valuable.
So just so you guys know, I'm probably going to crank these out one of these times for the podcast, and we're all going to be in here sweating even more.
Yeah.
But no, let's get down to kind of the nitty gritty. Josh, you got some facts for us about the movie?
Yes. So sadly, Vince is not here with us this week, and he's the one who always provides the solid facts about the movie. So this might be a little bit bare bones, but stick with us. So John Wick, directed by Chad Stahelski, written by Derek Kolstad, was released September 19th, 2014. It had a budget of $20 to $30 million, and it grossed $88.8 million at the box office, which I was pretty surprised. I thought it would have been more than that. And then I only have one, Vince usually has a whole list. I have one casting consideration, which was for John Wick. Who do you guys think they would have cast for John Wick besides Keanu Reeves?
Ryan Gosling.
I just wanted to say Sacha Baron Cohen.
Oh my god.
Please. Actually, he's coming out with
great.
a film or a series right now, right? Where he is a James Bond figure, I think.
I don't know.
I saw a preview for it on YouTube. Maybe I'll look it up again. I want to say Brad Pitt.
Ooh.
Very interesting. And like I said, I don't know exactly if maybe all of those guys were maybe considered, but at very first when they wrote the role, this might surprise you guys, with Paul Newman in mind. You guys know who Paul Newman is?
Whoa.
I don't know who that is.
So if you think about,
He's so old.
It's exactly the thing, is that he's super old. And so originally when the writers were writing the part of John Wick, they talk about him as being, the guy you send to kill the boogeyman and all this stuff. He has a super huge reputation. And the reason for that when they were writing it is because it's this guy who's lived this whole life.
He's been in the game for a long time.
He's been in the game for forever, so he has this fabled past. And so it's this older-ish guy who apparently can still throw down.
Wow.
So, fun fact. But then the producers came and they said, no, we want Keanu Reeves. So,
Good choice.
there you go. And Keanu made, last fun fact, he made they reported, they didn't know exactly, he made $1 to $2 million for the first movie for John Wick.
Wow.
So small change for a big guy like Keanu. he probably couldn't fund the second one with his money like he did with The Matrix.
Yeah, he ends up donating all of his money anyway. He's such a good guy.
He's the nicest guy. But have you seen him prepare for his roles, the videos on YouTube, or when they're I don't know, I see him all the time on just scrolling through Facebook where it's Keanu Reeves prepping for his next movie. He's thumping people and shooting guns. I'm
He's intense.
He is an American man right there. And two, he goes all out. I don't think he's a method actor, but I think he's more along the lines of, I need to prepare this and it needs to be right.
Tom Cruise in it.
It said he went, he was practicing and he spent 4 months learning judo and jujitsu and different martial arts for the movie.
Whoa.
So,
He knows
Keanu.
Kung Fu.
I know Kung Fu.
That's a throwback to The Matrix right there. Oh my gosh. That's pretty great. I loved it. Also, here's something I read when they were originally designing and coming up with a couple of what do you want to call it? When they originally writing the screenplay for this, because Vince isn't here, I had to go find some facts, right? So I have one fact that really stoked me up for this. Hold on, I gotta pull up my notebook. So Derek Kolstad, the guy who wrote John Wick, he wanted to explore what would happen if the worst man in existence found salvation, and when the source of his salvation was ripped from him, what happens? Do the gates of Hades open? That's a direct quote from him in an interview. Essentially, like, John Wick is designed to be crazy.
That is this week's synopsis in a tweet.
There you go.
Synopsis in a tweet. Direct quote from the writer.
No, but for real, though, if you think about that, that's literally what happens in the movie. You know, you think about it and you think, you know, probably something we'll talk about if John Wick is a good guy or if he's a bad guy. I mean, you think about it and that's like kind of what it is, because obviously if he was mixed up in all this stuff before, as good or as much as we like him, you know, that he had to be a pretty, maybe not a shady dude, but maybe a shady dude. Actually, I'll throw it out there.
For sure.
A shady dude. So, yeah. So he could have been like the craziest guy ever. And obviously he is this fabled past because, you know, he's the one you send to kill the boogeyman. But then he left it all. So, yeah, super crazy.
What's his... So they call him the boogeyman, don't they? Like, don't they call him the Baba Yaga during that?
Yeah. The Baba Yaga.
Okay. How would you feel if you wronged someone? Like, okay, right. You cut someone off on the freeway coming here tonight. Find out that guy is the boogeyman. And because you cut him off, he spilled his drink on his lap. It was hot coffee. And he's pissed. He's coming to get you. Where would you hide? If you were in the shoes of someone who's being chased by someone like John Wick, where would you hide at this point without giving away spoilers?
I'd probably opt to keep driving. I'm not a good hider. I'm a good runner. Not a good hider.
I honestly have no clue. That's like, just like into the mountains or something. I have no clue. I would just feel so out of it. I would probably just stop and say like, "Hey man, like,
Can I buy you a new coffee?"
just like I'll buy you a new coffee and a new suit, just like anything you want."
What about the third-degree burns in his lap? No, I'm just kidding. Oh. Do you have any thoughts on that? Where would you go?
Man, I feel like I would just go home and just hope to spend my last moments in a place that I felt happy and comfortable.
I kind of feel the same way, actually. I would just come home, like, casually, like, you know, what's that show where, like Pirates of the Caribbean, like the final one where it's a guy from the East India Trading Company, and they drive down the middle of the two ships and, like, blowing up the ship, and he's just casually walking down the railing, breathing in, taking in those last moments before he gets blown to smithereens. Kind of like that. I just casually close my door, lock my car per usual, walk in the front door, pet my dog, put her out back, sit down on my couch, and just...
Yeah.
Yep, take me.
That's
Wait
it.
for the
That's
inevitable.
exactly, that's the scene
You're
right there.
leading
It's so
him
good.
to the family, though. Just saying. Just saying. You're bringing him home.
But my wife is never home when I come home from work. She comes home later than I do, so
She'll find you.
she'll just find me like that.
And let's be real, if it was John Wick and your family, you know, actually didn't do anything wrong or didn't try to stab you in the back after they got you, then you're probably
So
good.
this is why. I don't want to jump ahead, but this
Yeah.
is why I think he's a good guy.
Ooh.
I know he's technically a bad guy because he's an assassin, but if you watch close, he lets a lot of people live that don't need to die.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
It's true.
including, fun fact, Kevin Nash. He was the Russian bodyguard. He's in the movie for about 30 seconds. He is a WWE wrestler.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The
Big
guy who was
Daddy
guarding
Diesel.
the back door.
Yeah.
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 He's
Oh,
like, take the
yeah.
night off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's in Magic Mike 1 and 2. Those are good movies. Don't look at me like that.
Well, I've never watched either Magic
should.
Mike,
They're a
but
good time.
I only know of the one guy who's like the handsome Spanish man who like super fit all the time. I can't remember. But
Antonio
also,
Banderas.
yeah, is that who it is?
He is
I don't know.
Not in those movies.
No.
No,
That's not
but
it.
there's like
You don't
this
know-
guy who's like dark and tan and oiled down well.
You don't know Channing Tatum or Matthew McConaughey?
Are they both in there?
Yep.
Oh, and Matt Bomer from White Collar.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is he the one with the
Yeah.
facial hair
Yeah.
right there? And I don't know.
No, he's
I'll have to
baby
look.
face, but we're all gonna go home
Anyways.
and watch this movie now.
Tonight after we get off this, I'm gonna go out and sit on the couch with my wife and say Magic Mike time.
If anyone asks, I just went to IMDb. That's all.
Perfect.
How did you bring us from John Wick to Magic
I don't
Mike?
know, man.
How did you do that?
The Russian bodyguard. That's how we got here.
skills. We got skills.
It's
like
all-
John Wick for sexy movies.
I'm a fan now. I'm really curious now. So I'm not. I didn't mean to like. I hope I didn't come off rude though. It's like, and he's proud of it. But I want to see it now. So maybe I'll go sit down. I don't work again tomorrow. Who knows? Maybe I'll just sit there on the couch with my dog and watch it. My life could change in an instant.
There you go.
But okay. So before we kind of dive in, we have spoilers now. This is the episode. I think we're ready to go. Does anyone else have any thoughts or anything like that?
Oh, for Vince, watch The Dark Crystal.
Yep, you did it.
There you
Vince,
go, Vince.
that one's for you.
And just so you guys know, since we are talking about doing it, I will also, as indignant as I've been about it, I will be watching The Dark Crystal. So you'll hear Vince's thoughts, Casey's thoughts, and my thoughts.
What
about
was the
it.
last movie you were kind of like against watching and you watching it like it was pretty good?
Alita. It was Alita.
Yeah.
So
I have to say this. I've seen The Dark Crystal. I can't watch it anymore because at some point one of my friends showed me this like Dark Crystal redub on YouTube.
Don't ruin it for me.
They
movie?
They redid it was just one scene and they redid a few of the voices with these like super like just I can't even describe it, but they redid the voices to sound very like thugs and like it's just goofy. It's so goofy, and now I can't watch the movie because that's just all I hear now. So everyone, just be careful. And I'm sorry, Vince. I'm sorry. Can't do it.
So there you go. That was for Vince, and we're now jumping into spoiler territory for John Wick.
Yes. And so I can finally ask this question, which I've been wanting to ask all day since I thought of it. Using 5 words, how would you describe John Wick? Not the whole movie, but just the character of said John Wick.
I have 5 words. A man in love with skills.
Ooh.
6.
No, A doesn't count.
Man in love. with
Man
you.
in love with skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's perfect.
That's very true.
I'm gonna go with the description that's used in movie 1 and movie 2. Do you guys want me to do it?
Yeah.
too?
I'm ready.
Yes.
Yeah, so the two mob bosses who are brothers in the first movie and second movie describe him as a man of focus, commitment, and sheer f***ing will.
Yeah.
So that's 5
gave
words
me
for John
chills.
Wick. That's the description from his
I think
There you
people
go.
who
I
fear
think
him.
need we say more? No, I'm just kidding.
That is pretty much need we say more. I'll just like throw in mine because it's just add a little bit. It's not as good as that one, but it's no nonsense gunman smokes Russians.
That one is great.
No nonsense is that's like what I was thinking as I watched the movies. Like so much of it is it's just no nonsense.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it is. The very first time I watched it, I guess I didn't really get it because I'm used to regular action movies where you build up to the climax and it's like really drawn out and things like that. So when he walked up and he just shot Theon Greyjoy, I don't know the name of the actor.
Oh my gosh, that's who he is. I
Alfie-
couldn't figure that out.
Alfie Allen.
Alfie
Yeah.
Allen, yeah.
When he just walks up and like shoots him and then leaves,
Yeah.
I was like, what was that? But then I realized like what John Wick is, and I'm like, that was
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
That was great. He just had to do his business.
It's like almost not
did it.
satisfying.
Yeah, well, it's
Until you appreciate
anti-action film, right? Because
Yeah.
usually, like Josh says, they stretch it out and make it happen. And no, don't kill me. This was my plan. And no. Nope. Boom, boom. 2 shots. Gone. Walk away.
Yeah, it's
Going
so-
after the dad.
It's so on brand.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it.
Well, yeah. So that's the thing is that it switches. It gives you what John Wick really is, which is the no nonsense, like we talked about, which happens throughout the entire movie, where there's so little in this movie that's done through words, and so much is done through the action itself, which is really great. And then again, it also compromises for people who do love action movies, and at the very end, it kind of gives you the drawn out conclusion when he spoiler kills the dad. Boom, jump to the end of the movie.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
What? I didn't watch this film yet,
Oh
guys.
my
Okay.
gosh.
That was his dad?
What?
No, but like you said, a lot of it's conveyed in action. But when they do speak, they are building the world. Every conversation makes their world bigger and more interesting, and like pulls you in. Like, what's the Continental? What are these rules? What are these gold coins? and nobody explains anything to you, but it makes you want to come back for more.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
it's so much as ambiguous that you just love it. And when they do talk, like you said, they're explaining the story. And I think that Keanu Reeves' best acting in this movie is, like we said, through his action and through his fighting and everything, and not through his words. Sometimes he's really funny. Sometimes his like acting, like when he's talking to people, is subpar. You can like you could feel that it's Keanu Reeves like acting, you know, when he's talking to people. Sorry to blow out the mic there. You can just feel, because it's like it almost feels like a forced conversation, but then sometimes it's really funny because that's also kind of who John Wick is he's kind of awkward and
Yeah, it works.
no nonsense and just like that. So
Well, I read something and I kind of looked into a couple of videos about the character of John Wick, right? Like him as a background, like, so, right, he's escaped the assassin game per se, right? He's left this world of the Continental, paying for things in gold coins, having these weird rules that nobody quite understands yet. And he's fallen in love, got a wife, and he's got a house. And did you guys notice by the way the house was set up at all that it was kind of like designed for people to come and leave, not to entertain? Did you guys kind of notice that?
No,
There's a ton of like arts around. There's a ton of art around the house. It's like very decorated and it's clean and tidy. It's not a place you bring people. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then, you know, his world is his wife, who gets sick at the beginning of the film, right? And then he gets a puppy. And this is the hardest part of the movie for me because
my
I have
gosh.
a beautiful fresh dog over here.
did you say fresh?
And why are you pointing at Michael?
My dog's right outside the wall behind
I mean,
Michael.
I'm obedient. But jeez.
but like, you know, like I have this, she's a year old now, so I guess she's not fresh anymore. She's a little aged. But essentially, like, man, I couldn't do what happens here. It's like really heart feeling. So essentially John Wick goes to a gas station one day, meets these Russian fiends. They come over and they're like, how much for the car? And give the year off, which was what, like a 68 Mustang? I can't remember.
It was 69.
Oh, 69.
Trust me, I never miss a 69.
But they're like, how much for the car? He's like, it's not for sale. And then he pops into the window. He's like, oh, a puppy, and like kind of sweet with it. And then the Russian guy's like, calm down. Goes back to the house. Later in the night, John Wick.
Whoa. You're like skipping over like one of like the best lines of the movie.
Whoa, what is
It
it?
kind of sets it up.
Because it sets
They
you
all
up and
set it up.
lets you know that, you know, John Wick really is more than he appears to be. Because obviously it's sad and all this stuff, but you know pretty much nothing about his
At this
back
point,
life.
you don't know anything.
But then all of a sudden the guy leans in and in Russian he says everything has a price, and then he just looks back at him and he says, well, this doesn't. And so that kind of like gives you the first little. And I could have messed that up. Like,
He responds in Russian.
yeah, he responds. Sorry, if
Yeah,
I didn't
which
say
is-
that. He responds
in Russian, which is like, whoa. Okay.
The best Russian ever, like just response, just whoosh, right back. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to skip that, guys. I'm sorry. I was just trying to get to the puppy
Get to
part.
the meat.
But essentially, like I said, pulling from the quote earlier, right? This is the worst man in the world, and everything is ripped from him. So at this point, his wife has been ripped from him. He's in a very sad state, mourning, right? His wife from the grave sends him a puppy, and then after this experience with the people at the gas station, they break into his house, start beating the crap out of this dude, and kill his freaking dog. And that just flips a switch, right? And what's crazy though, and this is the part to me that I thought was, he just lets himself get beat up here. So you think he's like, oh man, this guy is like a really miserable, weak, sucky dude. And then he goes over, mourns, goes back to bed, buries the puppy, right? Or buries the puppy, goes back to bed. The next day, he's riding the bus to go
Still in his clothes. He's got a bloody shirt on.
Yeah. I have to tell this because I feel like it sets up the whole rest of the film. This is why I have to like give this like scene by scene, because I don't really want to play it out this way. But then he shows up at this garage, right? And there's this guy there who's kind of like, oh, hey, John, how's it going? Like, you don't know this guy, how they know each other. And he's like, was it here? That's just his question, right? And then you
No nonsense.
Yeah, no nonsense. Gets kind of the story, finds out who it is, and it's like, it's on right there.
It's go time.
What do you guys think would happen if you were in the scenario? Like, everything's ripped from you. Would you just go ham? Like, how would you proceed?
Yes. The answer is yes.
I really want my answer to be yes.
Yeah. So I have this weird background story that I've actually been in this. No, I've never been in this situation, but I've been in this like my thought.
I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, thanks. So I had to come to the conclusion of like, what would I do in this situation? So my wife has a coworker that he let his cats roam the neighborhood. He was just outdoor, indoor cats, and he had a neighbor that didn't like cats, and he went away, and he came home, and the vet called, or the pound called him and said, "Hey, your cat's here. He died. He got hit by a car. You want to get him, bring him home." And I had to think like, oh, okay, well, the guy, the coworker, didn't do anything. He just was like, I don't have any proof, but I know it was them. And I had thought about like, what would I actually do if they had killed my cats? And I would literally burn their house down. I'd wait for them to leave, but I would burn their house down and wait for them on the sidewalk. Be like, this is how it feels to lose something you love. And then I just...
I knew this was going to be good.
I've been sitting over here afraid to laugh like in some parts because I'm like, this is awkwardly funny and I love it.
But also the best, and now I know to never, I mean, I wasn't going to, but never kill Michael's cats.
Thank you.
Ever.
Goes for anyone's cats. No. That's madness. Well done. Well played. I can support that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? What would you do?
Sorry, I'm just like still in admiration of that. That's why I had a little quiet moment there. Gosh, that's a really hard thing because I would like to say that I would like go out and like go ham and do something where at the same time I'm like, I'm just like, I don't even own a gun, which like, sorry, like, you know, people are going to listen to this and be like, oh, this dude doesn't have a gun. Let's break into his house. Like, I'll probably get one now that I said that. So I don't know. I'm just like sort of not that person. So as much as I'd like to say I would like go out and do something crazy, depending on the circumstances, I might just call the cops because I'm sort of like that wimpy person, you know. But that's me.
I'm a guns guy. It's important that you know that.
I mean, this is the first time I've met him. He has a necklace on with a bullet on it. So just so you guys know.
Until you get one, if you need to borrow one, I'll still have 13. All right.
That's good.
It's good to know. We know our guy now. We know our guy.
So
what would you do?
I mean, I have to say that like, I mean, I like to use them recreationally, just shooting for fun, but also like anyone who owns guns, like I think there's an aspect of like I have these in case I ever need them. Yeah. And so for sure there's like a little part of me that's like well, yeah, if somebody came and tried to take everything away from me, like yeah, I have my lifeline and I'm gonna have more than just like my bare hands to defend whatever they're trying to take away from me. So
yeah,
I definitely wouldn't be able to John Wick any situation.
I think you can,
because I don't know.
with that many guns, I think I feel like you would be pretty confident in going out there, especially. And this is something, and obviously there are a lot of people who disagree with all sorts of things with guns, right? But I grew up with a mindset, like with a father, and I still believe this: if I have it and somebody's in my house and they deserve it, I'm gonna take them out.
Yeah. And
if they're like assaulting my wife, like killing my dog, like I would do about anything for that dog. I need everyone to know that. I've mentioned my dog a lot in this podcast, that I would do anything for that dog. I have axes in this house hidden strategically.
I love that about you.
Like the other night the last
this
episode,
place feels more like home.
The other night down the street there was a break-in, like a robbery, an armed robbery at the store here. And I was just like casually went and got an axe and brought it in this room where we were podcasting.
It was great.
And then the whole rest of the night, I just waited and watched my wife like out the doors. And I was just making sure that no one's breaking in here because I was going to go mess someone up. And I don't think that like honestly like I could bring myself to like killing someone, but I want to make sure that they suffer. Like I would swipe an arm off. Like people can live like me and that's okay. But like there's got to be a sense where when somebody takes everything from you, that you kind of let loose a little bit, I think. And I think that's the honest thing. For those people who can forgive and, you know, turn away, good on you. I'm really not that guy, personally. But
Well, I think
I'm also not a very violent person normally.
I think also to just tie what you said like back into the movie, I think that John Wick is that guy because you think about it, when you're in that world, you're really almost never done. And so I think that when he left that world, right, to be with his wife, I'm sure that he still had some loose ends which weren't tied up.
No.
But he sort of just had to forget that and leave it. But when this happened, I mean, that's something else, because when at first people told me about it and they were like, oh yeah, it's about this guy who he goes and like someone like kills his dog, and so he goes all crazy on him. And I was like, I get it. I'm like, but at the same time, I don't get it. But then the way that it sets it up, like, it's super, like, for an action movie, it's super emotional. Like the whole part where his wife dies, they're playing the perfect music, the perfect soundtrack for it. Mm-hmm. And when she has the voiceover for when he's reading the note, when he gets the dog, you're so attached emotionally to it, to literally less than 48 hours later have the dog killed, like in front of you on camera. So,
in that movie, it was only 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I checked from the beginning of the movie to the moment he's reading the letter and gets the dog. 15 minutes. You immediately are hooked. 100%. You are in love.
it's so good. Masterful.
That's just good movie making.
Yeah.
This was a well done story. It sets you up very well to be emotionally involved and ready for the next steps of the movie, right? Because I didn't feel any remorse for anything he did during this whole thing.
No, you don't. It's incredible.
Right? Why do you think that is? Because you're so emotionally invested in those first 15 minutes in the situation? Or what do you think it is?
I thought about this. The killing of the dog, it becomes like almost like a novelty of this movie. Like, you know, you talk about like somebody killing a dog and your mind might immediately go to John Wick.
Yeah.
But I feel like it was actually like a really almost artistic thing that they did, where this is what separates the bad guys from the real monsters. Like, there's tons of bad guys out there trying to kill the protagonists. Like, that's every movie. There's bad guys trying to kill good guys, or the other way around, whatever. But like, nobody kills the dog. Like, nobody kills the puppy. Like, that's a psychopath. That's a monster. And so I think that like that was really crucial to like all of a sudden it's like, oh, this isn't like just an action movie. Like, these guys are monsters.
Yeah.
And they wanted you to feel that like super early, super quick. And so then you're like, yeah, I'm on this guy's side. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna root for him for the rest of the time.
Totally.
Well, one of the craziest lines of the movie is it's when the dad captures John Wick and he says, "All of this for a puppy." Like,
and all of us are like, no.
Yeah. Well, he gives the explanation. He like when he's trapped, when they finally get him and he's put on the chair, he gives the explanation of like, I put my wife in the ground and she gave me this dog so I didn't have to grieve alone, and your son took that from me. Like, I'm gonna cry right now. Like, that is a lot to deal with. Like, I was like, when you see that scene, you put yourself in that situation and you're just like, oh, when you put it like that, like, I 100% am behind every action you do in this movie, you know? And because like they're like the symbolism of just like almost pure innocence, right? Like pure love. They just love you no matter what, and there's like no reason to hurt them. So when you see that happen, you're like, oh, well, okay.
Yeah, for sure. And so we have that. And so when you see the guys kill him, you know, and like we talked about how they're just, you know, that these guys are psychopaths. We still don't know too much about John Wick. I mean, we know that something's up, but then, you know, we see the son, he goes back to his dad, and his dad's there with the Allstate Mayhem guy, you know?
Yeah.
And do you guys know his name? I don't know his
No,
name.
but that was the only thing
He's
about that movie that took
he's
me
the
out of it.
Vulture.
Oh, wait, well, he's...
That's a Brooklyn Nine-Nine reference.
Oh, no, he is the Vulture from
Yeah, for
Brooklyn.
anyone. Yeah.
Yeah. He's the Vulture.
Rosa. Man, I got a crush on Rosa.
Dude, everyone's got a crush on Rosa. Anyway, sorry. So he's there with that guy, and he starts beating him up. And like we said, we still don't know much about John Wick, but then he calls him, I who does he call?
John Leguizamo is the guy at the chop shop.
Oh,
Chop
right.
shop guy.
Yeah. So he calls him and he's like, yo, like, why did you punch my son in the face? What the heck? He's like, well, because you know that this guy's obviously like still below him. He's like, well, I know it's your son, but he stole John Wick's car and he killed his dog. And the guy's just like, oh.
Yeah. That,
Hangs up the phone.
yeah. This is my favorite quote
And
of
so
the
that's what
entire
it
movie.
ramps up even more. So.
Yeah. My favorite quote of the entire movie is that scene that Josh just played out, where he calls and he gives him the rundown, and the guy just says, "Oh," like that sets up the entirety of like who John Wick is and how everyone's afraid of him.
And it piques your interest so much because you're already piqued, and it keeps on going, and it keeps on going up with his "oh." And while we're talking about favorite lines, while I did like that one earlier, I'll mention mine really quick. Mine was, I think it's the only one where Keanu Reeves sounds super awkward, but it's super funny when he's talking with the policeman at the door.
That's
Oh
the one
my
I wrote
gosh,
down as
it's
my
so
favorite
good.
one.
Hey, Jimmy. Hi, John. And he totally sees the body. You working again? Just tying up some loose ends. Well, I'll leave you to it. Good night, John. Good night, Jimmy.
That
I
is my
laughed
favorite
so hard.
quote.
I was on the train going home, and that happened, and I like busted out. Like, no shame. Everyone looked at me. Did not care. So there you go. That's my favorite line of the whole movie.
That just sets everything up for the light humor, but it's dark humor, right? It's like very lightly dark. Let's talk about one thing here. So when he arrives at the Continental, right? You receive kind of like, oh, hey, is the management still the same, right? And he's like, oh, yes. And the concierge guy, he's just really like, what do you want to call it? Like proper the whole time.
I love that guy. He's
Yeah.
sweet.
He's just on his business. But then he like gives him a room and he's like, I want to speak to the manager, right? And he walks down the club and all of his old acquaintances, John Wick's old acquaintance, right? There's like, John, hey, how's it going? You back in the game? Nope, not yet. And then he gets over to the manager. He's like, well, you're back? What are you doing? You know you can't like come back into this world and just leave whenever you want. And he kind of just says, nah, I'm just tying up some loose ends, essentially the same type of thing. And then he just begins and just goes for it. Why do you think like him going to the Continental and just having that little scene where it's like, are you back? Are you in? What are you doing? Like, why was that important for this movie?
Well, like Josh said, it gives you mystery. It keeps you intrigued of like, okay, who is he? Like, what has he done? Like, because you see the scene where he starts smashing up the concrete before, and his back has that tattoo, and kind of explains like he's the boogeyman, and these are the people, or he's the man you send to kill the boogeyman. And then when he gets to the place where all the assassins are, everybody knows him. Everyone's like, oh, hey, oh no, are you back? You're gonna take work from me.
You're gonna take my coins and my money.
I think it was an important part of, like, ambiguously illustrating the contrast for John Wick. Illustrating the fact that, like, oh, you used to be all in. This was your life. This is all that you did. And then you very consciously and, like, intentionally made a separation and you were out. It was like, and he says, you know, he talks about being retired. Like, you retired from it. Like, you've been gone. And now everyone's like, are you back? And so I think it helped kind of draw that for people because we didn't actually get to see that. That, like, this was a real separation and he did it on purpose. And it had to be that way for him.
Well, doesn't the dad kind of describe that he gave him an undoable task or an uncompletable task,
Yeah, the
right?
impossible task.
Impossible task. And then now he's back doing stuff. And also, I didn't touch on this. What did you guys think when he was like busting out the floor and he pulls it up and there's like gold coins and stuff in there? What were you thinking right there?
Well, like we talked about, it's so ambiguous, but it, you know, like I think Michael mentioned this part, and he's like taking the shower, and you see the thing on his back, and you're just like, we don't know exactly what is going on, but we know that this is a bad man, and he is about to be unleashed on everybody. Yeah. So I think it's so important, that part.
It's really awesome to me how, like, super ambiguous, like you said, everything's so vague, but at the same time, like, it makes sense. Like, it's really easy to just accept it as you go.
Exactly. And like we talk about this being different from other action movies, but we know enough about action movies that we have enough that even though we don't know every little thing that's going on in the story, we know, hey, like, he's ticked off. He's going to get what he needs to get. He's going to do what he needs to do. So even though we don't know all of the details and we know that we'll get that as it goes along, we're like, all right, like, let's do this. We don't know everything, but we know where this is going. We're in for the ride because we're so connected to him and everything.
When he did that, though, when he gets the hammer out and, like, opens up the floor, like, I was pumped because for sure there's still, like, a very, like, there's, like, a primal man corner of myself that, like, has always wanted to have, like a go bag and guns, like, hidden under the concrete and, like, that nobody else knows about but me, and that's it. Like, I mean, probably ever since I was like 13, I wanted something like that. And he gets going and opens it up, and you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I've always wanted under my basement concrete. That's actually exactly it.
You're just like, this is perfect. 'Cause I remember like wanting to build like a little dugout, like a hobbit hole essentially, and just have all like everything stashed back there in a hillside somewhere. And go off the grid, you know, like Tremors style. Like, I don't know if you guys seen the classic Tremors where he has a concrete bunker out there and
Kevin
all
Bacon.
the goods. Yeah, it's the best thing ever. And I always wanted one of those, and this was kind of fulfilling that childhood wish. I'm like, I have a house now. I could probably like fabricate something out of my little basement over there that's 3 feet deep.
It was such a good John Wick version of that because he's so like, all right. Earlier I said I wouldn't be able to John Wick any situation. Here's what I really mean by that. I think I could shoot people who are really, really bad. I don't wear suits. I don't wear suits. This is one of the craziest things of this movie. What's with the suits that you can wear the whole time and be this mobile and this agile and get all the stuff done? I hate wearing suits for like just sitting through something. I can't do it. And he wears the suit. It's like perfectly tailored. It looks so good. It's so clean. He opens up the box in the basement and everything's perfectly organized. It's all in nice rows. It looks so good. Everything has its own perfectly cut out little compartment. Like, it's so John Wick.
Yeah. Well, here's the question now that we've brought up the suit and everything like that. For like suit and style here, would you go with John Wick suit or James Bond's like suits and outfits?
Oh, I'm going John Wick for sure.
Yeah, John Wick all day, all black.
The all black, it's so good.
Like complete respect to 007, but it's got to be John Wick. So I think that settles that.
That was a quick settlement. I was expecting some sort of like, well, James Bond is a classic hero in a suit. No, I loved it.
Watch Vince text us like as soon as we release this. It's James Bond.
You uncultured Neanderthals.
Shouldn't have gone to Puerto Rico, Vince.
So, yeah, moving on. Like, he's doing all this action, all these movements, and he's hunting down the sun first, right? And this is his main target, is to get and kill the sun, right? Because he wants that vengeance. He wants that closure. And so he essentially chases the sun down to where he's in this club called the Red Circle, I believe is what the club is called. What do you guys think about the club scene? That is like one of my favorite action scenes in this whole film.
It's great.
It is. Yeah, it's so crazy. It's an action scene all its own.
Yeah, the scene itself inside the club of like being able to film that many people and like still understand what the narrative is. It was great. So good. And then on top of that, all the action with like people running out and oh man, that was so good. Did he go wait, from the nightclub, did he go down into the bathhouse? Was that the same?
Yeah.
Man, that was good.
It's like all the same place. Like,
Yeah,
these
he starts
Russians,
slow.
they're just like, hey man, we've got this building in New York City, and every single like hangout place is just like different floors of this building. Like we got the bathhouse here, we got the club here.
They got the bar and lounge above it, like the quieter section. They had everything. And the father has hired all these guys to kind of watch out and guard his son, right? And John Wick is coming out and just popping these dudes off through the club, and people are screaming close by, but everyone else is still just going for it.
It takes a good hot minute for that place to really clear out.
It's just a Tuesday.
Just a Tuesday in a Russian nightclub.
Exactly.
No, with the action scenes. There was one action scene before, but we'll link it up with the one in the house and with the nightclub. The way that they choreograph all the gun violence and all the gun work, they call it gun fu. right? Because he's so smooth and fluid with it all. But the movie, the way they do it is so realistic, and Justin probably will like side on me with this, but like he takes time to like reload, and like he has to like put the gun down and check it and like cock it and move it, and there's like it's all there, which makes it feel so real. And like
and also it raises the anxiety of the whole thing a little bit, where it's like this guy's actually out of bullets every couple seconds.
Absolutely. And he takes hits. He's not invincible. He's getting hurt. You can see it. And when he hurts people in like those vicious ways, when that guy's on the kitchen counter and he breaks his neck, it's slow. And then after that, and on his kitchen floor, he's stabbing somebody, and they're fighting with a knife for
slow.
Like 30 seconds.
It's slow and it's brutal.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that though, because that is one of my favorite things about John Wick is magazine changes. It's almost like they purposely caught every single one, and it's because Keanu did so much training beforehand with like actual firearm training and actual like speed shooting, like competition style shooting. Like I'm sure you guys have probably seen some of the videos. Like he did a lot, and so like that aspect of it is actually real, and like that's a really cool thing that I think just gets glazed over in a lot of action movies where they're like, we're not too worried about it, but they'll put the camera right on the gun for like most of the gun mechanics, which is pretty cool.
That is super cool. One thing that kind of goes along with this, especially, is that the two directors are actually originally stuntmen. One of them was actually Keanu's stuntman for The Matrix, which is really cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so when they hired these guys, they ended up being collaborator directors. One of them got director, one of them got producer, according to IMDb and the internet. But these guys are real stuntmen, and so they wanted to make it as real and actual as they could. And I think that like brought a real like grit to this movie, is that they didn't pull no punches, right? They just went for it. They like, what'd you call it earlier? No reservations. They just
No
go
nonsense.
For it. No nonsense.
Yeah.
That's the
No
word.
nonsense.
I was
No
like, what
nonsense.
is this
That's the
word?
truth too. And even in the car chases and things like that feels real. There's a car accident when one of the cars slams into an SUV and the SUV slams into a pole, and that felt real. That wasn't like flipping and explosions that crushed the car, and it was an immediate stop, and grit was the perfect word for it.
Well, yeah, because he does like things that are real and you see in real life, not just like crazy, oh, maybe this could happen. Like when he does that and it crashes into the pole, he uses like a pit maneuver, like a real thing. And because there's two SUVs, he pushes like the one SUV like off of the dock or whatever, and you see that the side of the Mustang's all like banged up.
And this also is crucial when his car gets pushed over and they watch it fall all the way to the concrete and it doesn't explode. It just hits the ground and it's totally destroyed and there's no fire.
It was cool.
And that also is like
that's how it happened.
We're breaking the mold a little bit from like action movie rules.
I did something that I wanted to mention when we were talking about the gun scene and everything, is that it was so realistic, but at the same time it was really artfully done, is that in a very subtle way, obviously not as much as Baby Driver like we talked about, a lot of the action and the gunshots and everything went along with like that techno music that was playing in the background. Like there was a few times where like the music was going and you could tell just because of like how it repeats and everything, because EDM music is really repetitive, it would like get to a part where it'd be like bum bum, and it would do something like that, and so everything would go and it would go and then he would go shoot, and so like while it was super realistic, it was also kind of artfully done in a Baby Driver-ish sort of way to give it a loose comparison.
Yeah.
So perfectly choreographed.
Yeah, a good music in a movie, if you can't tell that it's going on, it's done really well. It's like meshed well with the scene so much that you don't even notice that it's there until you're like focusing on it. You're like, oh my gosh, this works perfectly. Also, Josh, that was some good beatboxing.
Oh,
I need some more of that in my life.
That was ugly. That was just to give you like the idea
Yeah,
of what was going on.
Could I actually get just on a flash drive, get me that sample?
Yeah.
Just that little sound sample.
Yeah,
I feel like we could do a lot with it.
I'll just send it out to you.
Please no.
Remix. This is called the Josh beat right here.
Yeah, Josh beat.
Oh man.
Do you know what's kind of interesting? Another weird kind of interesting fact. The directors, obviously, one, they're stuntmen, but two, they're actually fans of musicals, one of the two of them in particular. And so when they're shooting some of these scenes, they did them based around scenes that they'd seen in famous musicals, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Awesome. Which ones?
I can't remember. I'll
That
have to look
is
back.
incredible news, and I can't wait to read more about that.
Yeah, I'll find the thing. It's on my computer here, but I was like, that's a really interesting thought that you would take the idea from something that's usually so bright, loud, colorful, happy, and like obviously there are sad and dark musicals as well, right? But you would implement the idea of these fluid moments into this action film that's grit, that's raw, that's bloody. I loved it. It was
That's
great.
so awesome.
But no,
Well, it is really cool because I think it goes along with a lot of the movie, which is like there's more depth to this movie than is obvious. You know, when you really watch and you really pay attention, like you're going to pick up on a lot. And I think it's actually crazy how relatable of a character John Wick can be, where he has this crisis and like something that he loves is taken away. Like he goes on a killing rampage, but like there's something to be said for like when you have nothing left to lose, like you're gonna let your hair down a little. Like that's something that could probably happen to any of us in our own way, you know. And also this idea of him being like having a hard time like committing to like I'm 1 foot in, I'm 1 foot out. Like I know what I want, but I also know what I know and what I'm really good at and what will be easy for me. And I think like a lot of people have similar conflicts in their life all the time. So it's interesting to me how like really how relatable, you know, there's a lot under the surface to the movie. And so that like level of like artistic addition from like the musicals and the way they set it all up, like I just feel like it all fits together like so perfectly.
yeah. It's a nice little soup there of everything we need and, and delicious.
We talked about like some different action scenes, and obviously there's so much action in this movie that you can't talk about all of it. One of my favorite scenes was when they're fighting in the house and they have that really cool shot that splits the screen down the middle with the wall when he has the guy on the one side of it and the guy tries to shoot him and he ends up like shooting him through the wall, and you see exactly where his gun is pointed and exactly like sort of like where the blood spurts go to see. It's just really like tastefully done, because even though it's like a really cool shot, it's also like done really realistically like we've talked about, as well as it just looks really cool. So I was like, dang, when I saw that shot. So there's that.
There's one at the end when John Wick hits the guy with the car, and he rolls over the top of the car, but he also has his pistol up and he shoots through the ceiling of the car.
It's so good.
Because he knows like he wasn't moving fast enough to like kill him.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was great.
The car scene. Well, so think about it. You're filming a movie, and I think we've talked about this. There are certain cities, so they filmed this in New York City and the surrounding areas, but they couldn't do everything in New York City that they need to as far as a car chase goes. So they went to the dock out, like the dock area, and where like the helicopter's taking off, and they had this intense car
It was
scene.
such a confined car scene.
Yeah. But it made
crazy.
a ton of cool sense, right? It was like, this fits what we've seen the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it was
wasn't
very
out
on
there.
brand.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they show early on he's like driving his Mustang, and he drives well, and it looks like that's his release. And then it comes back. It's like foreshadowing towards the end where he is an incredible driver. He's like doing these like perfect U-turns around like posts and shooting and like doing those pit maneuvers and everything. It's great. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. I just love cars. I love car scenes. I'm just giddy over here about them. Here's a question though. We haven't really talked much like about the supporting cast, right? So one, you have the father. He's a Swedish guy. You have Alfie Allen, who's a British guy, and then you have my favorite, Willem Dafoe.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't know how we've ever mentioned him yet.
Yeah.
Well, what did you guys think about his character the whole time? Because he was hired to actually kill John Wick, but then he's like supporting him the whole entire time.
That's one of those things that's another mystery. They have a history together, and you never learn. You never learn what it was.
You just know they had some sort of really connected history, so much that he shows up at his wife's funeral, and at first you're like, maybe this guy is like gonna be a bad guy and he has some bad intentions toward him, so he's just checking up on him to make sure he's not gonna be super pissed and come back and kill a ton of people. And then when you see him on the roof, you're still sort of like 50-50 when he's about to, it looks like he's about to shoot him in his hotel room. And then when he shoots like right next to him, you're like, all right, I know what's going on.
When he's on the roof, I'm up to 90-10 at that point. I'm immediately like, okay, now I see. I'm glad they're letting us know now.
So yeah, I mean, Willem Dafoe, he's one of my favorite actors. He can do pretty much anything that you give him. He can do a ton of stuff. And so this I thought was so interesting because he was one of the most important characters in the movie. I mean, without him a couple of times, John Wick probably would have died. Not probably, he would have died. And like you said, we just never really find out. You know that there was some sort of deep connection because when he finds him, obviously he's super sad and he says, okay, now I gave the dude a chance, but now I have to go kill the dad. But you just never know.
So, have you guys ever seen the Boondock Saints?
Yes. That's a definite yes from this guy.
Yeah,
over here.
absolutely. What if it's the same character?
Oh man.
I don't know. Everyone's very confused. Go watch Boondock Saints.
Yeah, I don't.
He's a cop, but he's a nutbag.
He's crazy.
He this is totally in line with who he would be later on.
Yeah, it fits.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just a
it plays.
little movie
It plays.
Twilight Zone for you guys. Sorry.
Yeah, I feel like he's just he's the ultimate like true homie. Like he did he take the job from the Russian mob guy because he knew that if he said no, then someone else was going to get offered the job? Probably. He's like, he asks like, is the contract exclusive? And so he's like, all right, I'm going to say yes, because if I don't, then they're going to offer it to someone else who will kill my friend. And so it's interesting to me that like, this is John Wick who, yeah, if we really think about it, he might be like in his past life, like was probably a bad dude, like not a good guy, but like there's some real respect and real friendship here. Not just like professional courtesy, but like actual relationship.
Something that's interesting to me, and I don't want to like throw out like plot holes because I really like this movie. They have this hotel, and it's a super special hotel where like all of these people come and you do your business, you know, but nothing can actually happen inside the hotel. Even though nothing's supposed to happen inside of this hotel, why is there just like these like open windows out to where someone could snipe you off of a rooftop? That's my question.
Well, that's what's crazy. And I was wondering about this. I was like, one, why is this hotel just downtown NYC and all these criminals are just walking in and out with guns and nobody's batting an eye? But also, like, go back to the police officer, right, who goes to John Wick's house.
Sorry.
Like, are they paying folks off? Like, is this like this underground
like,
society owning our regular
deeply
society?
integrated
Yeah.
is all of this?
Yeah. Maybe if we watch The Family on Netflix, we'll know how deep the circles
I
are.
have seen that.
I
I'm just
wa-
saying that I've watched The Family. It's very scary.
I kind of want to know. It's a story about like how deeply intertwined like the government and everyone who's a part of the government is, but also this world government. It's a pretty big thing, but we won't go into that. But it sounds awesome.
Casey, so I think I just forgot my point. With them like walking around New York with a bunch of guns, America. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
That was perfect. America.
America.
Sorry, I thought this was America.
Not New York though.
Yeah.
Not New York.
It's just so crazy. The whole thought of that though, like there's this underground society that we really have no understanding of. And what's cool about this too is we're picked up right in the middle like of a day in the life of John Wick, right? Where a lot of superhero films, like you really see like where there's a hero, in this case an anti-hero, you're like with him for a few days before it like hits the fan, right? And in this one you're like, what a depressing day to have joined John Wick on his journey. And then it just gets crazier and crazier as it goes. And then next thing you know, you're at a hotel. This chick is breaking into his room to kill him.
Yeah.
And yeah, why is everyone having contracts against each other? Like, how often do these people kill each other off is my question.
I feel like, you know, out in the city, you know, stuff goes down and people will kill each other. But then again, the thing is that John Wick disrupts it so much that people are willing to break the rules to get that money and to have that recognition. But then at the end of the movie, you also see that this society that we still don't really know much at the end of this movie about, they're still the ones who are calling the shots. You know, they call the chick in. They're like, hey, like, you dug your own grave. You're out of the what's it called?
Continental.
The Continental. You're out of the Continental, and 4 people shoot her simultaneously.
Your membership has been terminated.
Yeah, which was
That
great.
was a wild
that was a great
execution.
scene. Yeah, and she was a great like other side of the coin to what John Wick is, because he's like all about respect and loyalty and not killing the people that he doesn't have to, and she is all about herself and money and being good at her job and getting it done. So that was really fun to see them fight.
Well, yeah, because you talked about earlier how John Wick doesn't kill a lot of people that he has to, and he leaves her. Like, she literally came in there to kill him, and he leaves her, and because of that, she's the opposite, and she ends up killing Harry, and he was a good dude.
He was only on screen for like a minute, and you were in love with the guy.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this guy's great.
You immediately like him because he has those little sock suspenders.
We're throwing it back to some Magic Mike stuff right there, the sexy movies.
And it makes sense because if you're going to be running around doing flipping kicks and killing people, you're probably going to wear sock suspenders.
It goes with the
That's how you
suit,
do it.
man. That's what it does. Everything goes together in this. The world is perfectly designed and curated.
I would say there's either one flaw I have is the Allstate guy. That's it. This is a perfect movie. That guy takes me out of the movie.
Dude, yeah, he's the
so
worst.
much. Yeah, like if he wasn't in the movie, I would say it's a perfect movie. And I think there's only like 3 perfect movies in the entire.
Was he doing Allstate before this?
Yeah.
So it was like, well, that was like me when they had the commercial for, what was it? The Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and they got the T-Mobile guy in it. And I'm just like, you know, like that skinny guy with the curly hair. He's also in Zombieland, Double Tap, which that's like the only thing that I'm not excited about for that movie. Is that guy, the T-Mobile guy.
Wait,
is
that
in
guy's
it.
in it? He's the clone of the one guy.
He's the clone of, what's his name in the movie? It's not
Jesse
Tallahassee.
Eisenberg.
Well, Jesse Eisenberg. And it's
Columbus.
Columbus, yeah. So he's the clone of him, and so that took me out of it too. So I think that's a very valid point, Michael. Took me out of it too.
Yeah. Anyone else have anything they want to throw under the bus for this film? Like, say, could have been better? That's a good sound, actually.
I would say, like, the first John Wick 1, I mean, it gets better after you've watched the other ones. I think that's true. Like, I mean, obviously you understand more, but like the fighting style, everything stays so consistent. Like, it's all the same thing, and you get to see more of it, and it opens up. So you can watch the first movie and absolutely love it, but like at that point, like you have such a narrow scope of like what it really is, and so that's not a criticism, but like it is like something nice to be aware of, which is like it's a lot easier to like really talk up this movie once you've seen the other two and like you know it for what it is. Like you were saying before, like it was so much better to you once you understood it for like what it really was. Like you didn't put it on the shelf with the other action movies. So
now, consistent is the best word for this movie and for this trilogy. I don't want to open it up into the other movies, but Justin makes a good point. The other movies make the first one better. Good trilogies, good sequels make the originals better. Star Wars, Godfather, How to Train Your Dragon, like all of these. What is that? Not a good one?
I'm just glad I'm not alone in the room on that one.
No, like I totally agree as well. Like How to Train Your Dragon is definitely a part of that. It was just
John
sort of
Wick,
like I was taking it back from Star Wars, The Godfather to How to Train Your Dragon.
This just proves how wide Michael's range of films and his appreciation for films are. I support that because I love How to Train Your Dragon. Actually, it's the one where they find the mom. Is that the second or the third one?
That's the second.
Yeah,
Whoa,
that one really.
Spoiler.
Sorry,
Hit you
guys.
home. But no, like
Yeah.
Justin was saying, like John Wick is probably one of the better trilogies of all time.
That's a bold statement, and I'll be honest with you. I watched this movie in a really weird way. I watched the second one, watched it on an airplane, watched the third one in the theater with Vince a while ago, and then watched the first one last.
Really?
So I was kind of weirdly into the universe already before I knew what was really going on. And the best part is they kept referencing the puppy. And I was like, wait.
You hadn't even seen
I
that
was
part
like,
of it.
I don't even know what's going on. All I knew is he had his dog the whole time, and he kept dropping it off places. Oh, by the way, this is where I'm ending with. He got a new dog.
He got a new dog.
Yeah. And we need to talk about that because the very end of this, right, he fights off, kills the father eventually. So son and father, gone, dead, past history. But he goes into this place to, like, patch himself up, and he just takes a dog. This is my favorite part of John Wick. He's just like, I need a replacement. Here's my dog.
The clipboard on the little cage says to be put down.
Oh, I
so
didn't
the
see
dog's
that.
gonna be put down.
Wait, is that what it said?
Yeah, it's on there. It's small, but there's a stamp on the clipboard that's like on the dog's cage that says to be put down. And so he actually like saves the dog.
I didn't know I could like this movie more.
Yeah.
Well, because I had no idea. I was just like random. He took this dog, and I think that's beautiful because they're both in this case misfits. Because John was supposed to be killed in this, and his life is saved by himself, and he goes ahead and saves this dog's life.
What I like, and I don't know if this was intentional. I assume it was, but early in the movie, John Wick like wearing like khaki cotton pants and white t-shirt and just hanging out at home. John Wick gets this like adorable little like
It's a
beagle puppy that's like it's very light and very friendly looking, and like you would definitely let your kids play with that dog. And then end of the movie, black suit, bloodied up, cut up John Wick walks away with still very adorable, but like this little black pit bull that's like a little more intense and a little more fitting to like the character that we now know about, which I thought was a pretty interesting contrast with the dogs.
Yeah.
That's great. That's amazing. I bet you just figured out the whole movie with that. Like, that is so cool. Like, that is, like, really, that is so cool. I would never have thought that.
For real, though, the dog shows his progression as well as, because it shows the different type of dog, sort of shows where he is and that he's back into it, as well as him getting a dog is sort of like a personal little like growth for him, because his wife sent him a dog, from the grave, because she knew that while he's a strong guy, like he knew that she was so important to him that he would have such a hard time coping, but she knew that he'd be like, oh, I'm a man, like I can cope, like he'll do all this. She's like, you don't have to do that, you don't have to grieve alone. And so while because this is still only like days after she's died, this whole movie happens within days after she's died. And so it's sort of like a personal growth for him that he realizes, hey, like she said, I don't have to do this alone. These guys took that from me. I got back at them. And so it's not even just that I got back at them. Now I'm still going to have that. Maybe it's not the dog that my wife sent for me, but I'm still going to honor her wishes and do that. So I thought that was great.
Man, that was really beautiful, and I can't touch any farther on that without getting a little too deep.
I wanted to like just kind of like reiterate, because Mike brought up the gun fu, and I think it's a really cool. I feel like they kind of created their own style of fighting for this, which becomes a part of the consistency in the trilogy. But it is the mixture of martial arts while also holding guns that is like the most terrifying thing I can like come up with in my brain. This very fluid, very close, but using guns, and there's like martial arts and shooting at the same time, and like I mean, I can't really think of another movie where like they really use something so similar, and it's really, really cool that like they kind of created that and then they stuck with it the whole way through. Like I didn't realize that like someone had given it a name, that it was called Gun Fu, but like that's really cool.
That's super cool. I'm gonna use that all the time now.
I know gun fu.
I know gun fu.
I really didn't talk very much about it because I've been trying to like kind of keep tempo of everything and make sure I'm taking show notes, which I really want to put out. But the gun movement, like I think I mentioned this. I'm not really a violent person, but I was a wrestler when I was younger. I grew up in a wrestling family, and then I got into MMA and kind of like fighting, and I've always enjoyed like karate films. You know, The Forbidden Kingdom is one of my all-time favorite films. It's got Jackie Chan, and it's kind of a throwback to the 80s films. But once you combine, like you said, guns and kind of like kung fu and karate and all of this, I think that heightens anyone's level of excitement. I think that anyone who watches this movie should be excited just to understand what this is. Because one, guns are awesome in a very like honest statement. And two, I like ways of like finding to beat people up. Like the idea that somebody knows how to beat people up really creatively to do like massive damage and put them on the floor so they don't get up. And that's what this whole like, that's why I think I love the club sequence so much, the red circle, is because that's all that was just showcasing like his skills. And the best was he just kept getting back up, and you could show like he was beat up, and he was getting a little sore of this, but he's like, well, back to work, guys, and he kept going.
I'm not out of here yet.
No, that's now I want to talk for another 45
Super
minutes
cool.
about the fighting in this film.
And there's some cool cinematography to like how they don't show like all of John Wick for a lot of the fighting. Like there's showing what he's doing, not really who he is.
Yeah. Well, it's close up. It's very like tastefully done, right?
It's right in it.
You can see the hitting of the face and like the bloody when he bloodies people up, and
It's cool. They show the mechanics of all of it. It's awesome.
so I guess you could probably watch John Wick and you could be like Neo in the Matrix and say, I know Gun Fu. But yeah, no, I love talking this movie, and I think one thing we haven't really touched about either is we've talked a lot about the fighting action sequence. There's some very beautiful shots. You went to the cinematography, so I have to bring this up. Some of the shots that they did, the overhead of the city as they're kind of going in and scrolling and showing things, are so beautifully shot that I think we cannot end this podcast without giving kudos to that creative artwork. Because we talked about, a lot of the scenes and the way they were shot, but just some of the B-roll kind of stuff as things are moving around and things are shuffling are incredibly beautiful too. I don't know, Josh, you normally touch on a lot of this. Did you notice that kind of stuff?
I definitely notice it, and it provides a really good transition, which a lot of times in movies today especially, people have realized that that's a good way to cut scenes without it feeling awkward. But it was sort of, I'm not saying that it was like new, but the way that they did it was really tastefully done, as well as they did it when it was like dark outside and it was night and just showing New York the way it was meant to be, New York and everything like that. So shout out to that. Shout out to my other favorite character in the movie, which was the underworld crime doctor, who's just like stitching him up, and he's like, so you shouldn't really do anything. He's like, but I understand how this is. If you've got some business to finish, just take 2 of these first.
In that scene, he's like, do you need anything for the pain? And he has the whiskey, and he's like, no, I got this.
He says, your stitches will tear and you'll bleed, but you'll be able to do everything.
You'll be completely mobile.
Yeah,
So
you'll be mobile.
shout out that guy.
Well, there's so much more, and I think as we kind of add on and touch on the next 2 movies, I think we're going to be able to go back and include a lot of things that we've missed in this, because I think, like we've said, it all builds upon each other.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do actually the next 2 movies as well. So I'm kind of excited about this. And Justin, you're welcome to come back every Monday until that's finished, just so you know.
Dude, that sounds like a party.
If you're down, like, we'll have you back again. And I have another mic, so as Vince comes back, he can join us, and we won't have anyone left out at all.
We're gonna have to do battle. We're gonna have to fight to the death for the last mic. It's 4 mics. That's all we're getting.
I'm just gonna throw it on the floor and break it actually, and pull the Joker and be like, "We're having tryouts, guys, for the podcast."
Go.
No, but really, John Wick is a wonderful film that I think everyone should watch. Does anyone else have anything to add about why you should watch this film before we kind of depart? Why would you recommend this film to a friend?
If you haven't watched this film yet, we're in the year of Keanu now. If you are not in love with Keanu yet, there's something wrong with you, and get on the Keanu train. And if you want to start somewhere great, start with John Wick. And then, of course, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
That's perfect. Anything else from either of you two?
Well, I feel like to that point, like John Wick is quintessential Keanu Reeves. Like this is one of the roles that that was for him. And so if you're not a fan, or if you are, like, you gotta watch this one because like this is his movie. Like it's so good, and he just did it so well. But also like it's just an amazing, like visually it's so pleasant, even though it's like chaotic and violent, like because of what we've been talking about, like the perfectly choreographed movements and the awesome like lighting of the city shots and everything. Like it's very pleasant. Like it's a very easy to watch, even in spite of like how like gruesome it can be.
That's a good way to. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, so thanks so much for listening with us, guys. Make sure that you check us out on Instagram. Let us know your favorite part of the first John Wick. We'll go into the other two, like Casey mentioned. Let us know your favorite action parts, your favorite dog moments, whatever you want to from the first John Wick. Check us out on Twitter at PositiveWinePLA or on Instagram at PositiveWinePlayPodcast. We'll keep that going even when Vince is gone, so don't worry about that.
And we'll keep it live and fun. And yeah, I'm gonna post some of my favorite moments from John Wick over the next couple of days on Instagram. We'll probably split it up and post them on Twitter as well, just because it's fun to see what's interesting is each platform we get responses that are the same but so different. So it's gonna be fun to kind of see what y'all come up with. And thank you so much for listening in with us on John Wick. And so next time we're gonna talk John Wick 2. No big surprise there, I don't think. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. And Michael, as always, thank you for joining us. As a guest, we love having you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always fun.
And Justin, thank you so much for coming for the first time. We appreciate it. And I really hope you'll come back for John Wick 2.
Oh, this was a treat. And I am ready for next time.
Perfect. Maybe I'll perfect my dumplings by then so we can have dumplings before and little bows and be ready.
I love when you talk dirty like that.
All right, everyone, with that being said, thanks so much for tuning in to the Pause, Rewind, Play podcast, and we'll catch you next time.
Good night, Jimmy.